Good morning, everybody. I'm Milena Guiaria, and I'll be helping out the webinar today. Just a few heads up before we start. After the presentation, we have time for questions. You can use the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom page. Please use the option sent to everyone, not only to the presenter, so I can help him in the end of this with the questions. I'd like to welcome Andy, who will present the webinar. Andy, feel free to introduce yourself and start whenever you want.
Thank you, Melanie. That's appreciated. Good morning and good afternoon, perhaps good night to some people as well. I know there's quite a broad audience of joining, so thank you for joining us, taking the time, and really excited to share with you the first seminar on this topic, but probably one of many to follow. So I'm Andy Blackhall, and I'll introduce myself as we go. Contents for today's discussion, we're going to make some introductions. I'll talk briefly about WRC, so you've got a point of reference. Talk about some specific reference projects on this topic, and then introduce, for those who may not already be familiar with nationally determined contributions, and that will set the scene really for carbon and water use, and then really get into an update on the progress to date on the carbon initiative, and then really a call for everybody to get involved. So on today's call, we don't intend to get into any detailed workings, but what we're going to provide is the context and the setting of why this topic and why now. Okay, so a little bit about WRC. I'm the Managing Director of the Water Research Centre, WRC. We're about 250 people here. And here's just a bit of a background on my resume, predominantly in the water sector, but actually prior to that, automotive engineering would be my background. I've worked with various organisations and predominantly with an international focus. That's something I'm passionate about, and appreciate the opportunity to engage with everybody on the call today during the call, or if you want to get in touch afterwards, then please do so. My contact details are there. I'm a sitting member with the Water Loss Steering Group, so really appreciate those who voted for that, and looking forward to work with professionals and colleagues on various topics going forward. From a WRC perspective, we're based here in the UK, very cold UK, I can say today, in Swindon, which is about an hour west of London. But we have various interactions from work in New Zealand all the way across then into the Caribbean. Yeah, I dare say many people have heard of some of the work we do. We have 5 objectives, so I'd just like to give you a big thank you today, because these objectives, what we say in the business, if we're hitting all 5 of these, then we're doing really well. So the purpose of today will be to raise our consciousness about sustainability, which is good. That will help us, and it's a good opportunity to be able to build a great place to work. And hopefully everybody on the call are change makers and want to see that they're probably impatient with the current situation of running utilities, and want to be able to influence and make changes by doing that, because by doing that we impact our local communities, and we bring together that global community. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you about this topic. The purpose of the initiative is to pull together a body of evidence and reference material that can be shared across the IWA global community on the topic of water loss and on the topic of carbon management. So I've got a couple of projects here just to share with you that we think are relevant to the topic. By all means, you can reflect back in the presentations and look at these, but the whole background from a UK perspective of carbon accounting and greenhouse gas emissions, as they were referred to back in 2005, WRC worked with UK Water Industry Research on that seminal piece of work. And there have been a series of other carbon-related topics that we've been working on, both in the UK and then internationally, that would be relevant to this topic. So what we're looking to do is volunteer that information up into the project portal, and ideally that will encourage other people to share research or work that's being done on the non-revenue topic and the carbon topic. But as you'll see, the objective of this project is to broaden the brief so that it looks at more utility-based activity, for NRW assessment. So Stuart Hamilton, who I hope he's on the call, perhaps he is, but we'll find out later, originated the idea following a precursor project called the Leakage Emissions Assessment, and that was Steve Kavanagh from Kavanagh Associates in the States that was leading on that project, and that was really looking at energy usage. The difference with this Leakage Initiatives project is looking to say, of all the operations that a utility does, is it possible to assign a embedded carbon value with the activity and with the cost or the embedded production of water in such a way that encapsulates the different practices the world over. So it may be here in the UK, there's a certain way of doing things. That's not always relevant to other locations around the world. We might use different practices or different materials. And so really what we're looking to do through this project is pull together a good view of all of those practices and to see whether we can derive a carbon-based value for that, as opposed to be using just standard coefficients. So, sorry, I'll just finish off on those bits. One piece that might be of interest and is a great source which we will be offering up to the project is the civil engineering specifications that are used here in the UK water industry. There are similar alternatives, but a piece of work that was recently completed here in the UK was with Trinity House, which manages all of the maritime assets here in the UK, looking at climate change and sea level rise. So there's quite a breadth of capability in the team that we're able to volunteer into this project. So let's talk about nationally determined contributions then, NDCs. This is all information that's readily accessible via the United Nations website on this topic. Nationally determined contributions originated in the Paris Agreement, and the idea there is, well, they're voluntary contributions at a national level for carbon reduction to meet the 1.5-degree target that was set. Obviously, a lot of things have changed since the Paris Agreement. And so really what this project gives practitioners in the water loss community and water operations community is a methodology whereby, regardless of the shifting sands of individual nations' politics, we're able to develop a method that correctly appraises the impacts of carbon on all of our operations and to use those in a structured decision-making method. So from the UK perspective, here's just an insight for you. In the UK, we were able to request freedom of information requests. And so I requested from Ofwat, who is the regulator of the water sector in the UK, an update on how NDCs at a water sector level are integrated into a government level. And that was with a view to think, well, actually, I could hazard a guess that generally the targets set at a political level, at a country level, don't always cascade down. And so therefore, delivering against those targets can be quite a challenge. So I raised that question with Ofwat here in the UK. And if Ofwat and the UK model is typical of other maturity models of water loss management across the world, then the feedback was as expected. While carbon is inbuilt into the sector's approach to managing water loss and water operations, there's no real direct link between government nationally determined contributions and, for instance, the water sector. However, Ofwat confirmed that there was an intention to try and make those causal links and those opportunities better presented. And I think this is an area where, referring back to Stuart, Stuart Hamilton, that he was really keen to try and ensure this project made progress so that governments have got a tool set, reference material to demonstrate that in all of the competing carbon reduction opportunities and options any government has got, that non-revenue water, management of public utilities, is definitely considered there as both a bankable thing, something that can be invested in, and also something that can deliver results quite quickly. So carbon and water use, it probably it goes without saying for the audience that's on this call, is a well-studied and an obvious link between the two. I reference a piece of work again, which all of this sort of stuff we will signpost through the upcoming website, but work on greenhouse gas emissions, as they were then called, and supply and demand management options started here in the UK back in 2008. And by 2009, it was embedded into leakage management or non-revenue water calculations. So there is some backdrop, but as we mentioned, the issue might be that the techniques used in the UK or in the US for repair, for water production, are very different around the globe. So what we're trying to do through this initiative is to capture all of that knowledge and then to be able to build some models around that. So the chart that we're now showing demonstrates that there's a real interest from a personal level as a consumer of energy and water, that overall embedded costs of water at a domestic level have increased over the last, well, since 2000 this is showing. And that's obviously because we're using water, we're using it to heat, and in a domestic setting, and obviously that incurs carbon, and the more efficient we can be with the water, the more efficient we therefore are with reducing carbon. And so that's nice, and that makes sense to us because we're paying the bills. But when it comes to managing utilities, then obviously the range of areas for optimizing and decision making are varied. So this is a example of a desalination plant, the membrane rack there, and obviously the process of desalination is an energy intensive process. Certain countries, certain continents are absolutely reliant on this source of water for potable use and for industrial use. Here in the UK, we're actually building a second desalination plant, and I think in the business plans we have 6 or 7 of those plans. So nowhere is immune. But what that's saying to us is at a sector level, embedded emissions are likely to increase, and so therefore our strategic response through non-revenue water has to adapt and has to demonstrate that it can offset some of those trends. So this is it just in a graphical format. This is taken from a presentation that was given back in Spain in 2024. If we take the blue trajectory as the increase in an unconstrained leakage or physical losses, those are set to increase as assets deteriorate. And obviously what we're trying to do with our current policy, the yellow dot, is to intervene, to stop that natural process of deterioration of physical losses, and then to intervene. So we can establish the fact that to produce water and to move it around a water network, we have a carbon intensive activity. And then when we start to intervene, we also have a carbon intensive activity. So sending a digger out to a site or an excavator to repair a leak has embedded in that activity some carbon. But of course, for security of water supplies, we want to do it. And the question is, how much does the work involved in reducing leakage on different policies, how much does that offset cost of producing another unit or another volume of water? And so really what this project is about is looking to understand all of those factors involved, and then helping decision makers to select certain policies in order to reduce and maintain leakage at a lower level. And that then will enable policymakers to be able to trade those options against the next best viable option. And we know, because of the way that NRW management is quite effective, that other longer term, slower payback options might be discounted as a result. And so the question has to then be, what confidence have we got in using NRW management compared to, let's say, other sort of emissions capture techniques? sequestration and other things. And this is where really the evidence for people who are supporting decisions that are made is needed. And this project, as well as other projects that have gone before it, will be all about building that confidence. And the question has to be about driving leakage down can be achieved, but we know, everybody who's involved in this topic knows how difficult it is to maintain low levels of leakage. And so we have to be able to provide confidence in the banking, the sectors that might want to invest in this as an alternative to another carbon reduction technique, that we can demonstrate the skills and the technique to reduce carbon and then to maintain it at a lower level. Okay, so this is the carbon initiative then, and this is everybody's opportunity to really get involved and drive this agenda forward. This is just another chart to illustrate that some of the leakage modeling components. And what we're really talking about is an adaptive pathway where policy X might mean that we use noise loggers and a certain repair technique, and that will drive leakage levels down, and there'll be a carbon tag with it. Policy Y might be adapting the in-pipe repair methods, and policy Z could well be mains replacement. But for each lower level of leakage, we need to determine the cost to get there and also the cost to reduce and maintain the level of carbon produced on an ongoing basis as a result. And that gives us that tradable options then. So here's the roadmap for the project. The initial aim, the initial focus is on activities related to the management of non-revenue water. But as mentioned, Stuart and the steering group are really keen then to broaden that once we've got a schema, a format in place. And then to research into the carbon intensity of those activities. So there will be, we'll come into the website shortly, but there will be a repository whereby if scaffolding in your part of the world uses lower carbon bamboo as opposed to heavy carbon steel in the UK, then there's clearly a difference in the emissions associated with the practices involved. And so what we're looking to establish is all of the practices and then derive the relevant carbon for that. So there's a big information gathering exercise, and we're interested in participants accessing regional data and publishing that and submitting it through to the website. The idea is then we'll maintain a website that hosts all of this information, and we start to pull that together and consolidate it, and then start to build some models that can be used in decision making. There'll be a requirement to undertake some data analysis to identify where perhaps certain techniques don't currently have some assessments for carbon intensity. We'll need to derive that and find places where that can be brought from. And then we'll produce an output that can be used by strategic planners and operators, and we'll disseminate that, and we'll then maintain that data set for any new innovative techniques. And that's really key, because what it will do is it'll give us a good insight to the activities. And then we can say, well, these activities are quite carbon intense. Where can innovation take place, or what is a better process to be able to address that? We reference the white paper, and this will be it's actually available if you Google IWA WLSG initiative. It's available on the IWA website, so you can Google that and read the paper if you've not received that yet. But it will be hosted on the project website as well, and you can see the background and the purpose of this project. So on the data collection side, then, what we're really interested in is we know what current activities take place here in the UK, but that may not be relevant. So we need people to engage in the project and to introduce your ways of working. And that knowledge exchange will be helpful, because it may well be that there's a higher standard over here, and that might be of interest to you. There's a different technique in a different region, and so that whole knowledge exchange will be key. We'll be having a blog on the website whereby we can introduce, we can exchange, we can comment, and we can see how that information is being built up. The work that's previously been done by Steve Kavanagh and the team around the production cost of electricity will obviously be a continuum into the models. So that's been really helpful. I think the phrase is we're standing on the shoulders of giants there. And that will help on the production costs. But at the same time, in order for us to make this really effective, in discussion, it would be really helpful to optimize the membrane replacement time based on another unit of water saved on the network. So if that means that membrane should be replaced sooner because the efficiency gains are there, and that's driven by the NRW management side, then that would be a good outcome. But that's going to take a fair bit of modeling. It's going to take people willing to share their data. And so the data capture figures, the flexibility to account for variations globally, regionally, and based on those practices. And then the data request form will be available for download and then upload. So we'll have the format and we'll be really looking for people in regions to champion this as part of the project and the initiative. So here's just a snapshot. This was a precursor as what goes into the website, and then the download template. But we'll be, considering topics that are outlined here, methods of travel to site. It may well be that the Carbon Initiative, identifies that you should have a remote operating base, or actually you've got too many of those, and actually that could be a decision support tool in running your operations. The installation activities, how those are performed, the detection activities against the volumes that are yielded, what repairs or replacement decisions get made or take place, the excavation types, backfill, whether you're using local material or actually whether this initiative drives a bigger focus on using other techniques like remediated glass for a recycling and a bedding material, and that might drive other integrated carbon thinking, the reinstatement techniques, and of course the communications between all of this. So we have an example here, which is looking at a structure around the methods, the asset types, sizes and diameters, excavation requirements, and so on and so forth, the volumes associated with that. So this will be a starter, and I'm sure that this will be developed as we go on to capture regional differences. So there's a big call, and the purpose of this initial webinar is to request your support, your engagement, and your communication of this in various regions on this topic. Our technical consultant here, Jacob Farrelly, his contact details on the page here, will share this, but we're really looking for as many people to get involved. We won't get it right, so we're happy to take positive criticism and constructive criticism, that's for sure. But the website that we'll share the details of will be able to be the link to access the blog and to start to share data. We'll be giving an update on the project at the Global Leakage Summit in London. If you're able to get there, then that will be on the 8th and 7th and 8th of May, sorry. And that will have a specific focus on this as one of the communication plans. And then we're hoping to provide a majority for completion of the project at the newly announced Brazil's Rio Water Loss Conference in 2026. So we'll be able to play back all of the results of the website. We'll have a completed report that will help on decision making, and a number of the team will be able to present the results there. So the request is, well, the website is currently under construction. You can access it via this link. Gary will also then share via the fortnightly update, and we'll make sure there's a monthly update via Igor, who's on the steering group on the project itself to keep pace. So that's pretty much it from me. Purpose was to introduce and give an overview, but happy to open to discussion or any insights anybody would like to share. So I'll hand back to you, Melanie, if that's okay. I can stop sharing.
Yeah. Hello. We don't have questions right now. Do I think everybody was really excited to know about the initiative, and it was a really great presentation. Anyone else wanna ask something or comment something?
I think, Melanie, it's Stuart. I think Bambus, we had a talk, call about this about 2 weeks ago, and you gave a very, very good high-level overview. I don't know if you can remember what you said, and can you go through that again?
Oh my goodness.
No, sorry to put you on the point, but yeah.
Now you really sort of asking difficult things, Stuart, but I'll do my best. Yeah, I've taken my memory pill this morning, so let's hope that what I said comes back more or less along the same lines. Basically, I think what we are hoping to achieve through this initiative is a continuation of the work that it was done in the leakage initiative. What Steve did together with the rest of the group, he reached the point where we are able now, in addition to the water balance, to have the carbon balance. So we know the water activities, how much carbon is involved in those activities, and if we are to reduce leakage, how much the carbon emissions will be reduced. However, what we don't know at this stage is in reducing leakage, we are to carry out certain activities, whether it's building chambers, DMA inlets, whether it's doing leakage runs and sweeps and trying to find leaks and fixing those leaks, reading meters, replacing pipes, replacing service connections. So what this initiative will try to achieve, as Andy explained, it's to gather information regarding these activities and how they are done, and what is the associated carbon with this initiative, with these activities. So in other words, when there will be tenders and the bidders, they put in their offers and their bids, and as we have managed to put through the international financing institutions over the years, the IWA water balance as being a standard, and the remaining of the IWA good practices in leakage reduction, in commercial reduction. We will also try over the next few years to embed this requirement in the project. Therefore, any project that will be put forward and any bid which will be submitted in order to execute that project, it will have a carbon footprint. And of course, amongst the lowest price and the best technical proposal, there will also, we are hoping that there will be another criterion, which is the lowest carbon emissions in executing those activities. And of course, NDCs were mentioned, and those are linked to the carbon reduction and so on. That's an additional benefit. I think what the initiative is trying to achieve, and the water loss specialist group as a whole, is to raise awareness in this area and to actually try and tap into another financial source. Because financing institutions, they don't look at us, just by saying we're going to reduce leakage as being attractive for funding. But if we attach as part of it, the carbon reduction and also the requirements that whatever proposals and bids are put forward, they are carbon friendly. And at the end of the day, we are hoping that at the end of the initiative, we'll also come up with a banding. An activity will be band A, which is green, and band C, say, or D, which is less green. So that is the concept behind, you know, the initiative and what we are trying to achieve. But in order to reach the point, we need to do this hard work, which Andy explained, gather information and try to understand what is involved in each activity. So I hope, Stuart, you know, it's more or less I repeated what I said a couple of weeks ago. If not, please fill in the gaps.
Yeah, thanks, Bambas. I mean, just moving to another level. If you take it, I'm currently involved in a project where we've calculated we've saved 161,100 tons of carbon. 161,000 tons of carbon, which is fine. The project replaced 20,000 or 16,000 service connections. But in reality, although it was a funded project by one of the banks, and although we've saved 161,000 tons of carbon, we don't know how many tons of carbon it cost us to save it. So although we're talking about brilliant, we saved 161,000 tons of carbon, we don't think we spent a lot of carbons, but we could have spent 150,000 tons of carbon to save 161. Now, realistically, then, if you look where the balance is, we're only net positive of 11,000 tons. So this is where it all started off from. Now, where it also comes from, that on the NRW side, if you're looking for a country or an island, say an island in the Caribbean somewhere, that is on desalination water and their intermittent supply, they can't, or we won't promote the fact is that they build a desalination plant to solve the problem, because the desalination plant will actually increase the tons of carbon on the project, and also the cost of installing the plant will be excessive in tons of carbon, and they'll still have an NRW problem. So where we're trying to lever this is to at the end of the day produce a project that we can say is category A in the carbon intensity. So the number of carbons it saved and the number of carbons it cost to get there, it's in a positive bit, and we'll have a scoring mechanism where it'll be category A, category B, category C. But we can also push the IFIs not to fund a project that is not carbon beneficial to the atmosphere. So you can't suddenly, I mean, if I said I saved 200,000 tons of carbon on a project, but I replaced every single water main in the region and every single service connection, I mean, we know common sense is not there, but also on the carbon side, but there wouldn't be a net positive carbon for us. So this is where it's all coming from, and Andy's agreed to take it on and lead it. And Andy said to me several times, where are we going with this? And I said, much like the LEI group, we don't know. We get somewhere, we'll get to a crossroads and we'll turn left or we'll turn right. Someone's put down, what are the critical boundary conditions that need to be defined? We don't know. This is what the discussion is about. We don't know where we're going to go. We don't know where we're going to end up. We're looking at noise logging. Is it better efficiency to have permanently installed noise loggers, or do lift and shift, or do traditional leak detection? Pressure management, what is the benefit? Meter reading, do we have permanently AMI systems, or do we do manually read meters? Do we do mains rehabilitation, sectional mains rehabilitation? Do we do open cut? Do we do thrust boring? Do we do pipe insertion? All these scores, all these processes will have a score in the matrix, what we're going to build up, what Andy's going to do, so we can actually say that, you know, the best opportunity on a rocky ground is going to be do pipe insertion, some sort of swage lining, compared to removing the pipe and installing a new pipe. So this is where we need the global presence of the team to come up with some sort of concept or ideas, or throw things at us, or throw things at Andy and the team to actually see where this is going to go. Because like I say, the idea is to understand how many tons of carbon it's cost us to get to the end goal compared to what you saved. So I hope that gives a bit more of a flavour of what we're trying to achieve. Or did it confuse everybody even more?
That's perfect. We do have a question here asking if we can share the presentation. I'm telling Volker that the webinar will be uploaded to the Water Loss YouTube channel. Angie, I'm not sure if you want to send this presentation to someone. And we have another question here, but now to Stuart Hamilton. It's Kiran Tota Maharaj. I'm sorry if I didn't say it correctly. What are the critical boundary conditions that need to be defined and standardized for effective water and carbon measurements in the Caribbean context, taking into account factors like data availability, accessibility, and the unique characteristics of island nations, such as varying population densities and water resource management practices?
I mean, if it's a question, there's lots of areas where we can get as intensive in this or as touching the surface. We're not going to get very far. Where I'm talking to, this is a specific island, or there's two islands in the Caribbean. I've been in discussions with both of them through the CWWA, the Caribbean Water and Wastewater. Both islands have built, one island built a temporary desalination plant to solve their NRW problem, with NRW exceeding 50%. And the other one has greater than 60%. And they have built two desalination plants to solve the problem. It's amazing. I was presenting in Mexico about 8 weeks ago, and a guy from France was talking, and he was talking about a project that was done in Morocco, that he was quite proud. They had losses of 70%, but to solve the problem, he built two desalination plants. To solve the problem, he said they didn't go on intermittent supply anymore. I said, what was the cost of carbons for that? Oh, he said a couple of 100,000 tons it cost us to put them in. Yeah, are you real? Yeah, and then he realised what he said and realised, oh, okay, I've done the wrong thing. But this is where the IFIs look at things, that they look at things with, let's solve the problem with a desalination plant. But we're trying to say to them, no, the carbon probably doesn't go away with your losses, which is what Steve Cavan has done with his group, and is now going to push it. No, this is the benefit of how we're going to save them losses, because you've got losses of X amount of tons, and to save is Y tons. Comparison to, as Bamba said, the categories A, B, C, D, E, and F and G, wherever we go, the lowest category will be desalination plant. The highest category, the category A, will be smart ideas, concepts, digital water, or something. That's where it is. So we got the dream of the AI initiatives, the digital water as the category A, to the worst association is the category G or E, or wherever we get to. But where we get, we don't know. This is the start core. This is the start meeting of the group.
So just,
and we don't know where it's going to go.
Can I follow up on that quickly? Oh,
yeah, go.
Yeah, just follow up on your comments, Stuart, because you have to define the boundary conditions. When you look at like a Dutch company, Element Water makers that use solar panels as well in some of the Dutch Caribbean islands, driving the reverse osmosis process. So if you are to measure both the carbon footprint of the water distribution system plus losses, the boundary conditions could be quite broad ranging, because you also have that challenge of dealing with the solar photovoltaics life cycle itself if you're using photovoltaics within the desalination plant. So I think it's a broader picture to look at. It has to be looked at holistically for small island developing states when you're looking at water loss. Far too often Caribbean countries and even like South Africa runs to desalination plants, but it's more intrinsically look at managing that water in an integrated water management approach, capturing that water. I think, yes, leakage within the pipeline sectors has to be looked at, but when you define carbon and your carbon footprint, it starts from point one, from the manufacture, distribution of the pipelines, the pumps, the list goes on. So I think it is a very good start, but just giving you my sort of opinion on it, it has to be sort of very, very broad ranging, capitalizing from point one to the end point, from where products itself finds its way to landfills. So that's just my take on it. Thank you.
I mean, we've had talks about this, Andy, about where do we go. I don't know if you want to comment, but you know, we said at what depth do we go? Do we go the whole scope, or do we just?
Yeah, I think to your point there, it'll be very regional specific, because desalination is a big consumer, and that'll drive technology advancements and deep sea desal plants that'll reduce that. But if a small island nation that is reliant on that has to appraise its options, then it will need to go very deep on its operations to justify anything else. So we can be led by regional or sort of continental demand on that. And when we start to volunteer all this information up, we'll start to see where there's some gaps. But yeah, it's a voyage of discovery, I think the phrase is, isn't it? And I think Bambos did a great job of recouping or recovering what he said 2 weeks ago in such short notice. Well done, Bambos.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I was just going to say, to all participants that, this is something fresh. This is something new. This is something that we don't know much about. Although there is a lot of information out there, we are trying to bring everything into the context of the work that we are doing on a daily basis. So I think, we cannot, at this point in time, define boundaries. That's what the Lake Group, did. They did not define anything. They moved forward, but you always have in mind, where am I going to go? What is the end goal? What am I trying to achieve? And going back to the Lake Group, and I'm sorry I'm using this for reference all the time, but I think it's a good example. The goal was to come up with a carbon balance to complement the water balance. And it was achieved within a couple of years. It was done and it was tested. And now the group, it's moving on to another stage, and they're trying to gather international data and continue, that path. But this particular group, which is a continuation, right? We are having another goal, as Stuart said. What would be our deliverable? And our deliverable is to put, if you like, the framework, and maybe come up with a tool that we will be in a position to put forward the most, if I can use that word, environmentally friendly approach in order to reduce leakage. As Stuart gave examples. So that's what we are going to try to achieve. And we lead all these and will guide us through all that. But we all need to chip in and add, our thoughts. There will be lots of discussions. And at the end of the day, hopefully we'll have a useful tool that we all agree on. And the Water Loss Specialist Group through IWA, will promote that. as another tool, available to the industry that will help utilities become greener. So I hope that's of some help, to the participants, these thoughts. Thank you.
And also, I think the urgency of this matter. So here in the UK, we've just recently had a change in legislation because of the hydrogen economy, and in drought situations, what gets water first. And I think across the globe, the tensions around water are going to become more pronounced. But there's a great opportunity if the NRW management community can demonstrate that reduction in water loss, physical water loss, can deliver more capacity in society. It could well be that we see NRW programs funded in a different way in the future by those organisations that need the water. So it could present a real opportunity for global water management.
Thank you, Andy. I think if we don't have any more questions or comments, we can finish for now. Thank you for this excellent presentation. I think it's a subject that everybody is really concerned and looking forward to go.
Melanie, Kieran's got his hand up.
Sure.
Kieran, he's got a question.
Sorry, no, I was just clapping. Sorry, wrong.
Okay, thank you.
It was just like well done, great presentation and something like that. So thank you so much, Andy. If you want to say something, just say.
All I want to say is, all I want to keep saying, and I said it to the LEI group at the start, and as Bamba said, I mean, this is the first time it's ever been done. Never in the water sector has this been done before. This is the first time it's ever been done. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know where it's going to lead. We want members from the AWWA, CWWA, PWWA. It's got to be a global thing. Where it goes, we don't know. What we're going to end up with, we don't know. But what we do know is that we can't do it just by using Andy and a couple of people from WRC and me, Bambas. We need a complete global interaction, group chats, everything, to throw it in there and push the boundaries where it's going to go. And when we're done, we want to use this as a case study for IFIs to choose best practices when they're delivering projects, and also for water companies to understand what is best practices. So that's what it's all about. But there's no, we only know where we're going the next step. The step after that, we've got an idea, but we don't know if we're going to left or right. So as long as we all know that.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Andy?
No, just as echoing, really keen to get involved, or people to get involved. Contact details have all been shared. There's no daft questions. There's a voyage of discovery on this one. So appreciate everybody jumping on the call, and for anybody who listens to it afterwards, if there are any clarifications, please get in touch.
Thank you so much. And we are finishing here.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks.